What's going on, folks? Ted from Nerd Immersion here, and I just wanted to make a final update on Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden, either until we get a major interview, some sort of actual play, additional information, or the book actually comes out. So I've done a little scouring from what I could do. There were 5 different interviews with Todd Kenrick and Chris Perkins. I watched all 5 of them. I took notes throughout. I went and read the official page. I read the Amazon page, which is still interesting to me that the Amazon page has different information than the official product page. So I kind of compiled them all down, and I'm just going to go through my notes and share to you what is confirmed that we know and what we kind of have theories about, and then we can kind of speculate a little bit at the end. So I'll go over here and I'll read you here's the product overview right from the Wizards of the Coast website. Some secrets are worth dying for. That's kind of the tagline of this book. Feel the cold touch of death in this adventure for the world's greatest role-playing game. In Icewind Dale, adventure is a dish best served cold. Beneath the unyielding night sky, you stand before a towering glacier and recite an ancient rhyme, causing a crack to form in a great wall of ice. Beyond this yawning fissure, the caves of hunger await. And past this icy dungeon is a secret so old and terrifying, a few dare speak of it. The mad wizards of the Arcane Brotherhood long to possess that which the god of winter's wrath has so coldly preserved, as do you. What fantastic secrets and treasures are entombed in the sunless heart of the glacier, and what will discovery mean for the denizens of Icewind Dale? Can you save 10 towns from the Frostmaiden's everlasting night? Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden is a tale of dark terror and revisits the forlorn, flickering candlelights of civilization known as 10 Towns, and sheds some light on many bone-chilling locations that surround these frontier settlements. Now, we've read this before. This was announced when it first kind of came out. But if we check the Amazon page, we have all of that. But then it also says, Brave the Frozen North, a Faerun and Dungeons & Dragons adventure for characters levels 1 to 12. Explore the frontier of Icewind Dale. Maps and guides will aid you on your journey through a land of isolation, paranoia, and deadly cold. Venture into 10 towns and other beloved D&D locations made famous by Drizzt Do'Urden and the Companions of the Hall. Encounter hazards of frozen wilderness. This book provides DMs with rules for running D&D adventures in icy tundras and wintry climes. And discover long-lasting treasures, magic items, and long-forgotten spells in the icy depths of a truly unforgettable Dungeons & Dragons adventure. So I'll go through my notes from the Chris Perkins interviews, but right there you can tell that the Amazon page gives you infinitely more information. It already is going to tell you that there are new spells in this book, which is something that was confirmed in the interviews with Chris Perkins, but the Amazon page gets you more information than the official product launch page on the Wizards of the Coast website, which I just kind of think is funny. Here, I'll zoom that in. That's this last kind of bullet down here. But yeah, we knew that was going to have information regarding icy climbs and things like that, but further expanded. They also reference Drizzt and the Companions of the Hall. It's just saying that the various locations of 10 towns are made famous by them. Does that mean that there will be allusions to those characters in this book or flat out stat blocks for them? I don't know. It's possible. The only other thing I want to mention is I didn't hear it, and maybe I just missed it, but I watched 4 out of those 5 interviews before filming this video. The other one I had watched during D&D Live, or when it was first kind of happening. But I don't recall hearing any information stating that it is going to be during the Age of Upheaval. That was something that was part of that Portuguese leak that I had done coverage on that said that it was going to take place in 1450. I didn't actually hear Chris Perkins mention that anywhere. That may or may not still be true. But for the most part, I will say that all of the information we received early on from leaks, like the cover art leak, as well as the D&D Beyond trailer leak, and then that Portuguese translation, all of those did seem to be true. So take that with a grain of salt. But we obviously know, as I discussed in a previous video, the big kind of thing is 320 pages. There will be 50 monster stat blocks, and you'll have feelings of dark and isolation and treachery and whatnot. So let me gather here what I've also been able to garner from those interviews. This book will have a ton of art in it. There will be a large focus on environment. Obviously, it's going to be icy tundra themed. But Chris Perkins did go on a talk a little bit about how interesting it was to try to convey this to the artists, because how it's Icewind Dale, it's icy tundra wasteland. How do you have light sources in the art pieces to be able to have light source to showcase what's in the art, right? If it's a tundra wasteland and it's just all dark and at night and full of swirling winds and stuff, you can't actually draw anything really that great because there's no source of light to make things noticeable. So they had to use things like torches and other things like that to provide light sources, whether it be arcane or mundane light sources, to provide a means to illuminate things to let you be able to actually see stuff. He also said there was a big focus too on less focus on, in some cases, on individual characters, because or it might be shot from the back, or because people are all wrapped up and bundled up because it's so cold. You're not necessarily sure who or what anyone is when you see them out on the street or out in the tundra, because, you know, they have their face covered, they're in hoods, they're in big parkas, so you might not know who you're talking to, and there's that kind of automatic thing, ideas of mistrust, because you don't know who you're speaking to because they're all bundled up. One thing he did mention as a specific character is Old Bitey, which is a knucklehead trout, a legendary knucklehead trout. If you don't know, Icewind Dale's big focus on fishing and scrimshaw, and the knucklehead trout are kind of the main export from the lakes in Tentown. But I guess it was a legendary knucklehead trout that didn't want to be caught, and eventually was, and is put on a plaque in a tavern in somewhere in Tentowns, and I guess a wizard cast a spell on it. So basically, they made one of the talking, like, big mouth bass, where you walk by and it like flips up and it talks to you. So that's apparently a canonical thing. There was concept art that someone had made for it, I guess, kind of almost maybe potentially as a joke. And then Chris Perkins loved it so much that he made it a part of the adventure and wrote it into it. Chris Perkins also said that he wanted to say that the monsters in here, while a lot of them are obviously icy themes or icy variants, right, like a snowy owlbear or potentially like just a snowy owl in general, there are a lot of really good general purpose monsters as well. So not necessarily... So if it's got 50 stat blocks, which we, again, have heard before, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're all going to be 50 icy monsters. Some of these may be usable as just good general purpose creatures to use anywhere, in any setting. And we also, again, know that Oriel the Frostmaiden, you're going to have a bunch of new different stat blocks for her in her multiple different forms. Also, he said, I actually remember this. So there, obviously, you saw the kind of the art piece that came out that showed who was all working on this book. And Chris had said that he worked with a lot more freelancers that he hadn't worked with before. And it's funny because I actually remember this. I remember he put out a tweet that said, like, hey, Twitter, who out there in the D&D space is creating really good content and is doing really good D&D work? And from that tweet, he said he was bombarded by a ton of people saying, hey, check out so-and-so, they do good work, check out this person, check out that person. And I guess he basically boiled that down to the people that came up the most over time. And then those are the people that he reached out to individually and said, hey, I got your name. Twitter said you did like really good work on D&D stuff. I'm writing a new adventure. Do you want to work on it? Which is really cool that like something as simple as a tweet from Chris Perkins led to a bunch of people writing on this book. And he also said, apparently a lot of those folks had this goal to put mountain goats in the book, I guess. So they all sort of, I guess, maybe conspired together to work mountain goats into the story. So I guess there's a theme of mountain goats in Icewind Dale, Rime of the Frostmaiden. Todd Kenrick brought up 30 Days of Night, the movie, or maybe the comic series. about an idea just to kind of further that isolation. And I hadn't something I hadn't thought about, but how 30 Days of Night would be a really good movie to get yourself into the mindset of trying to run this adventure, where it is isolation, it is horrible things are happening, and people how they deal and how they adapt to it. Chris Perkins said there will be a selection of magic items, as I stated, some new spells, and he said new spells because the story demanded it. So I have some thoughts on that. We'll get to that at the end. And he said there are some absolutely powerful and terrifying magic items, but if players are able to get access to them, they will have, quote, so much fun. They reiterated the fact that it is structured kind of similar to the Essentials kit in the way the overarching story is designed. He said there are 26 discrete adventure locations that, again, similar to the Essentials kit, can be kind of sandboxy in nature and how you go and find them. He said there are also a few big showcase locations, big villainous dungeon type locations that are, not places you're going to go. He called it a one-night stand. Like some of these adventure locations, you go there, you do the one thing there, and then you're done and you go somewhere else. But, these are more like long-term. You're going to be there for a while. He said they're not like normal dungeons. They have a lot of claustrophobic elements to them. And we already heard reference of the Caves of Hunger, and that was one that he referenced. Once again, levels 1 to 12. There apparently is a happy ending if you do certain things, I guess, right. Interesting and dramatic conclusions. He said he just gave us a little bit of lore about 10 Towns and how it works, which I'm not going to go into the lore part of it because that's not really what I do here on my channel. He did talk a little bit about the Frostmaiden and about how she is a lesser god. And he akined her to Hela from Thor Ragnarok, in that she is a god and she is powerful, but she's also tangible and an earthly figure. Like you can shake her hand, you can smack her across the face, right? She exists in the world. She is a god with godlike power, but she's not someone like Mistra or Selene or, Shar, someone very powerful, a greater deity. She's a lesser deity. He also said there was a lot of challenges in trying to depict Icewind Dale faithfully. As you know, and I've seen just in the comments alone from the amount of people who've been like, I don't really like the Forgotten Realms, but I love Icewind Dale. Whether it be from the novels, right, from made famous by the R.A. Salvatore Driz novels, or whether it be the Icewind Dale video game series, a lot of people have a love for Icewind Dale, so it was tricky to try to do. They wanted to make sure they did a good job replicating it faithfully. Chris also said he easily could have made this adventure 400 or 500 pages, so he had to rein himself back in. And I'm going to say, Chris, why? Don't rein yourself in next time. Maybe there's like a printing quota from like WotC heads that say like you can't make this too big, but we would have all been happy if you said that this adventure goes from 1 to 16 and it was 500 pages. I think nobody would be upset about that. So let's see, what else do we have? He had also said he did kind of give away an encounter. And we talked about earlier how they were saying that it has themes pulled from modern horror films. So we had heard reference to The Thing, obviously, right? We heard reference to Alien. We also now know there are references to The Shining and also Jaws. So apparently there is an encounter where you see the snow being pushed up in a line moving towards you, and then eventually you see a fin break out of the snow as this thing is moving towards you. And I guess he says it's basically a bullet, whether that means it is a bullet or it's not. But he says it's a bullet, it has a story, but essentially you're walking through the tundra and you see like it's a land shark, right? A fin comes out, swimming towards you through the snow, pushing it up in a line, coming to attack you. And they said not only was this inspired by Jaws, but this was also inspired by the end of John Carpenter's The Thing, with the planks coming after Kurt Russell's character. So again, he brought up the idea people are unrecognizable because of the obfuscation of their faces with parkas and whatnot. They said they wanted to bring NPCs to life, and some NPCs that are in this were already fleshed out in earlier products, so it's cool to retouch and see those again. And then he also brought up that because of Oriel's nature and the way 10 Towns is so, kind of at her whim due to her being the god of winter's cruelty and wrath, that certain towns have begun to make sacrifices to her to try and abate her and let them survive through the winter. So that may pose, kind of almost like not cult-like followings, or maybe even cult-like followings, but people willing to sacrifice, whether it be newcomers or whatnot, to the Frostmaiden to try and hope to have an easier winter. So that's something else that I'm sure will come up in the course of play. So that being said, that's kind of all the information I could gather, but we know there's going to be very interesting, powerful magical items that you can obtain. Does that mean they're just cool magic items? Does that mean we might get like potential legendary magic items from someone like the Companions of the Hall? Could we track down Aegis Fang? Could we steal Tom'ril the Heartseeker? I don't know. I also feel like we know that Spirit Halloween's doing that crossover with Dungeons and Dragons, and they're giving, there's the Drizzt costume and the Caddy Bree costume. Perhaps that is there's a reason why they're doing that, because like people know Drizzt, obviously I'd say more so than they know Caddy Bree, but they're kind of similar because they're in the same stories all the time. But I wonder if because we're going to Icewind Dale, that's why we got those costumes, because maybe they're going to be in this book and we'll have stat blocks for them. I know that will either elate or completely piss off a ton of the community if Drizzt shows his face anywhere in this book. But then again, if he has a stat block, in theory, you can kill him. So that may also appease a lot of people, because then they can take out all their perceived hate on Drizzt, and there you go. A lot of people don't. I guess a lot of people really like the Companions of the Hall, and a lot of people don't. So I guess it could go either way if you decide to put stats behind them. But then, hey, you know what? Maybe you can steal Twinkle and Icing Death, and you can become your own dual scimitar wielder. I don't know. So that's something that may be in there. I think I wouldn't mind having their stat blocks in there, mostly because I would like to see the stats for the magic items, and I'd love to see how they stat them out, because then we can see who is what and how 5th edition translations to these characters. So new spells, long forgotten icy spells. This is interesting because we don't typically see not always, new magic, new spell types in a book that's not a source book, right? So we have had this happen occasionally, right? The, what's it called? It was Elemental Evil Player's Companion. It wasn't Princess of the Apocalypse that gave us a bunch of new spells. So we had new elemental spells there. There were the handful of new spells added in Lost Laboratory of Koalish, right? The Galder spells, Flock of Familiars, Encode Thoughts, Cantrip. Those are all added, and that is technically an adventure. So I think this might be the first time in a while we're going to get like an adventure book that's going to give us new spells, which then makes me wonder if we're already going to get new player choices. I don't think we're going to get new like races to play, but we could. But I also feel like that's a big selling point of the book. So if you were going to get new races for the people players to make characters of, I feel like that's a huge point to pull people in. Why wouldn't you sell that up front? So I'm assuming there'll be new backgrounds, new player backgrounds in this book. And obviously we know there'll be new spells, probably new mundane equipment as well as new magical equipment. We know there's going to be rules for like the Goliath sporting events. So there will be like cool mini games to do. But my only reason I'm asking is there's art of like a cool like Urson polar bear person. If I go back over here, you can see right here, this like right here, there's this like polar bear person. And we don't really have a lot of, unless this is like a were polar bear, which it could be. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I would love to play as a polar bear person all the time. But I don't know if that, like I said, I feel like if there was going to be new races in this book, it would be, if it was me doing marketing, I'd be like, come play Icewind Dale, where there's going to be new icy spells, new magic items, and an additional new player race. I wouldn't have to tell you what it is, but I immediately have brought in a whole aspect of people that may or may not want to buy this book because, like, oh crap, there's a new race in it. Let me get it. I guess that would kind of make it similar to the Acquisitions Incorporated book, which was kind of like a setting, an adventure, and then also had a new race, funnily enough, new magic items, and new spells. So maybe in that respect, this book will be more like the Ac Inc. book. But I feel like I would tout that. But let me go look up the Acquisitions Incorporated book, because maybe they don't say that there's a new race in that. And then that would kind of, maybe I'm disproving my own point. Let's see. We'll read it together. 224-page book will give Dungeon Masters plenty of bits to play a 5th edition game, just as if we were with the crew at PAX. You'll find a new adventure that takes characters from 1 to 6. Party, Dungeons and Dragons. Yeah, it doesn't actually say. So, funnily enough, the Acquisitions Incorporated book information. Let's go over here and look at this too, because that's very interesting to me. Does it say it in this book or on the Wizards page? Let's see. Heists and hilarious moments. Start up your own Ac Inc. franchise. Options. New backgrounds. Okay, so here it says new backgrounds, character options, franchise information, and more. So it's very high level there. But the Ac Inc. book has new backgrounds, sure, but it has one whole new player race and several new spells as well as magic items. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Icewind Dale will have a new race, which would be really cool. But like I said, marketing-wise, tell us that up front. You will pull in a whole new group of people that only want player resources. There are people that will potentially buy this book, or at least buy portions of it on D&D Beyond, because they can get a new access to a new player race and new spells. So I don't know. I'm curious to see what your thoughts are. I'm going to guess you're probably going to fight Oriel at the end of this. Can you beat a lesser deity as a level 12 character? Probably not, but maybe. I don't know. Maybe you can, like... I don't know if that's going to be the point of this adventure, is to defeat her. Because that would have greater, like, world-sweeping ramifications if you kill a god. So I don't know. I feel like we already know we have stat blocks for her avatar in the book and her different forms. So in theory, if that happens, then maybe she'll be like a recurring villain that will pop up over time, that will, like, there to foil you and then go away and come back, and maybe you'll get to kind of build up that hatred towards her and then eventually defeat her at the end. That sounds pretty cool. But again, all of this, a lot of this stuff is all speculation. I gave you all I was able to find at the beginning, but I am curious what your thoughts are. Do you think that, everything that I've stated is, or what are your thoughts, one, on all of Chris Perkins' information that he provided? He seems like he didn't, I guess he really is sticking to his guns about not revealing stuff up front. He really wants to keep things, tight and under wraps, other than the fact that stuff was leaked ahead of time, to be able to, by keeping stuff under wraps, to be able to preserve that isolation kind of horror theme. Because one of the biggest detriments is that, like, a horror movie is like the best when you see it the first time. Obviously that's not always the case. Some hold up over time, but the first experience of watching a horror movie when everything is new and you don't know what's coming is the best. So they don't want to reveal too much about this book, because that will ruin that isolation horror vibe. And I haven't run a pre-written adventure on my channel in a long time. And I do feel like I kind of want to do it for this book. I'm pretty excited about it. I'm a big fan of horror movies. It is probably my favorite genre of of movie. So the fact that I could attempt to try to replicate that, because I don't feel like Curse of Strahd, I had like spooky vibes, but I don't feel like it nailed down horror very well, and I don't think that was really its intended purpose. So I think that I could definitely do that with Icewind Dale because of my knowledge of horror movies, but I also would want to play in it. And I feel like it's going to be harder for me to convince somebody to run a game for me on the channel. I don't know. But let me know what your thoughts are. Do you think, how many new spells do you think we're going to get? Is it going to be like one new cantrip? Or is it going to be like one cantrip, one first? So like, are we going to get, 10 new spells, a cantrip and a 1 through 9th level spell? Can you think of any historical lore-based spells that are forgotten icy spells that we should get? Right, are we going to get Ice Lance back from 3.5? Is there any good old spells that you remember that were icy, wintry themed that you love to see make a comeback in this book? And what do you think about races? Do you think we'll get a new race? Do you think we won't get any at all? Do you think the Companions of the Hall and Drizzt will have stat blocks? I'm curious. Let me know in the comments down below. Thanks again to my patrons for continuing to support the channel. Thanks to all of you for driving us closer and closer to 40,000 subscribers here on YouTube. Stay tuned. I've got a ton more content coming out. But I'm always looking for suggestions for new videos, so feel free to leave your suggestions for other things you'd like to see in the comments down below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.